My sister laughed at me during Thanksgiving. "You're just a failure," Victoria Ashford announced loud enough for our entire family to hear, her wine glass raised in mock salute. But only 20 minutes later, she was begging me not to tell her husband about the texts I found on her iPad. She had been mocking my job as a cashier while bragging about her perfect marriage and six-figure salary as a pharmaceutical sales director, so I casually mentioned I had borrowed her tablet to check a recipe and saw everything. Months of messages with my ex-boyfriend planning to run away together. The crystal wine glass she had been holding shattered against the hardwood floor, burgundy liquid spreading like blood across my mother's pristine white carpet. The silence that followed was delicious. Victoria's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide how the color drained from her face. Her husband Marcus looked up from his phone, confused by the sudden crash. My parents froze with serving spoons midair. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air, her perfectly manicured hand trembling as she reached toward me in a gesture that could have been plea or threat. I smiled, not the polite smile I had been wearing all evening while she publicly humiliated me, but something sharper. Something that made her take an involuntary step backward. I am Harper Ashford, 32 years old, and I have spent my entire life being compared to my older sister. Victoria was the golden child, Harvard graduate, corner office, designer wardrobe, handsome husband who owned a chain of dental practices. I was the disappointment who dropped out of community college, worked retail, lived in a studio apartment, and had recently been dumped by my boyfriend of 3 years. What my family didn't know was that I had been quietly documenting everything for the past 6 months, ever since I accidentally discovered Victoria's affair. I had screenshots, recordings, financial records showing how she had been funneling money from Marcus's accounts. And now, with 20 witnesses who had just heard me mention those texts, the power dynamic in our family was about to shift permanently. Victoria grabbed my arm with enough force to leave marks, her French-tipped nails digging into my skin. "Kitchen! Now!" she hissed through clenched teeth, that practiced smile never leaving her face even as panic blazed in her eyes. Our mother started to intervene, but I raised my free hand in a calming gesture. "Just sister talk," I said sweetly. "We'll be right back." As Victoria dragged me toward the kitchen, I caught Marcus watching us with the first flicker of suspicion I had ever seen cross his trusting face. Perfect. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had planned. The iPad I had mentioned was currently sitting in my car, backed up to 3 separate cloud accounts, with scheduled emails ready to send to Marcus's business partners, Victoria's employer, and every member of our extended family. All it would take was one text from me to stop those emails. Or not. The kitchen door swung shut behind us, cutting off the murmur of concerned relatives. Victoria released my arm and spun to face me, her composure cracking like the wine glass she had dropped. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Her voice was low, venomous, but underneath I heard the tremor of real fear. I leaned against the granite countertop, examining my nails with the same dismissive gesture she had used on me 100 times before. "Me? I'm just being honest. You're always saying honesty is important in families, right, Victoria?" Her jaw clenched. "How long have you known?" 6 months. Since I borrowed your iPad the last time I visited and saw a notification pop up. Can't wait to feel you again with a little heart emoji from someone named J. Rodriguez. I watched her face carefully. Though that's not his real name in your phone anymore, is it? You changed it to Gym Trainer after that. Smart. Except you forgot to delete the message history. Victoria's hand shot out to grab my phone from where it sat on the counter, but I was faster. I slipped it into my pocket and smiled. That wouldn't help anyway. Everything's already backed up. Multiple locations. And I've arranged for some very detailed emails to be sent out if I don't check in every 12 hours. The lie came easily. I had no such system in place yet, but watching her believe it was worth the risk. "How much do you want?" The question came out flat, businesslike. Of course she would try to buy her way out. That's how Victoria solved every problem. Throw money at it until it disappeared. "Is that what you think this is about? Money?" I asked, genuinely curious about how little she understood me despite being sisters for 32 years. "Yes," she said simply, already pulling out her phone. "Name your price. 50,000? 100,000? I can have it transferred by Monday." I laughed then. the sound sharp and unkind in the silent kitchen. You really think I'm that simple? That I can be bought off like some cheap blackmailer? Victoria's eyes narrowed. Everyone has a price, Harper. You're just holding out for a better offer. The contempt in her voice was familiar. That same tone she had used earlier when describing my little cashier job to our cousins. You've always been so proud of having nothing, so morally superior in your poverty. But we both know you're just waiting for someone to save you. Wrong. I pushed off from the counter and walked closer to her, close enough to see the fine lines her expensive concealer couldn't quite hide, close enough to smell the panic sweat mixing with her designer perfume. I don't want your money, Victoria. I want you to understand something. For 20 minutes tonight, you stood in front of our entire family and told them I was worthless. You mocked my job, my apartment, my life choices. You said I was an embarrassment to the Ashford name. Do you remember what else you said? Her silence was answer enough. You said I would die alone and forgotten because I never had any ambition. You said Marcus felt sorry for me. You said Mom and Dad were too polite to admit they were disappointed in how I turned out. My voice remained calm, conversational even. You said all of this while I stood there holding a serving platter, while our family laughed or looked away in embarrassment, while your perfect husband nodded along like a good little puppet. I was just joking, Victoria started, but I cut her off with a raised hand. No, you were being honest. Maybe the most honest you've been in years. And you know what? I appreciated it, because it made what I'm about to do feel absolutely justified. What are you going to do? Now her voice was small, frightened. The powerful pharmaceutical executive reduced to a scared woman in her mother's kitchen. I haven't decided yet, I admitted. See, I could send everything to Marcus right now. Your affair with Jason, my ex-boyfriend, yes, I know his real name, the money you've been skimming from Marcus's business accounts to pay for your hotel rooms, the fake business trips to Miami that were actually romantic getaways, the fact that you got pregnant last year and had an abortion without telling Marcus because you weren't sure if the baby was his. Victoria's legs gave out and she grabbed the counter for support. How could you possibly know? Jason tells me everything, I said simply. He's been telling me everything for 6 months, since I discovered your affair and contacted him with a very interesting proposition. The horror that crossed her face was beautiful. You've been working with him? Working with him! Victoria, I recruited him. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Our text conversation from earlier that day. We've been planning this moment since July. Every humiliation you put me through, every condescending comment, every time you made me feel small, we documented it all. And Jason? He's been doing the same with your pillow talk. You tell him everything when you think you're in love. This is insane. Victoria was crying now, mascara running in black streaks down her cheeks. You can't do this. I'm your sister. You should have thought about that before you called me a failure in front of our entire family. I pocketed my phone and moved toward the door. Now dry your tears, fix your makeup, and go back out there. Smile at your husband. Thank Mom for the wonderful dinner. Play the perfect daughter role you're so good at. Because if you don't, if you make even one more scene tonight, I send everything. But if you behave, if you're very, very good, maybe we can discuss terms. Terms? Hope flickered in her eyes, the desperate hope of someone being offered a lifeline. What terms? I paused with my hand on the door handle. First, you're going to stand up at that dinner table and apologize to me. Publicly. Sincerely. You're going to tell everyone that you were wrong, that I'm actually an incredibly strong person for making my own way without family money. You're going to praise my independence and work ethic. Victoria nodded frantically. Yes, okay, I can do that. Second, you're going to write me a check for $100,000, not as blackmail payment, as a gift. An apology gift for years of treating me like garbage. You'll tell Marcus it's to help me start my own business, which he'll approve of because he's actually a decent person who happens to be married to a monster. I'll do it. I'll do whatever you want. And third, I smiled again, watching her hang on my next words. You're going to end things with Jason, tonight. You're going to text him right now in front of me and tell him it's over, that you realized you love your husband and made a terrible mistake. Victoria's hand trembled as she reached for her phone. Why? if you two have been working together. Because Jason isn't in love with you, Victoria. He never was. He's in love with me. He has been for years. You were just the vehicle for teaching you a lesson about taking things that don't belong to you. The text was sent. 3 sentences that ended months of deception. Jason responded immediately with a single word. Done. Victoria stared at her phone screen in disbelief. I don't understand. You took him from me 3 years ago, I explained patiently. You saw that I was happy and you decided you wanted what I had. You seduced my boyfriend at your anniversary party, started an affair, convinced him I wasn't good enough for him. Do you even remember doing that? Or were you so used to taking what you wanted that it didn't even register? Harper, Victoria's voice failed her. The breakup devastated me, I continued. I was depressed for months, almost lost my job. But then Jason contacted me out of nowhere and told me everything. About how you manipulated him, how you loved the thrill of taking things from people, how you told him I was boring compared to you. And he felt guilty. So guilty that when I suggested we turn the tables, teach you a lesson about consequences, he jumped at the chance. This whole thing was a setup? Every single moment. I opened the kitchen door. Music and conversation from the living room drifted in, our family continuing their Thanksgiving celebration, unaware of the drama unfolding in the kitchen. Now come on, you have an apology to deliver. And Victoria, make it convincing. Marcus is already suspicious, and if he starts asking questions, I won't stop him from finding answers. We walked back into the dining room together. Victoria's makeup was hastily repaired, her smile forced but present. I watched as she stood at the head of the table, glass raised, and delivered the most humiliating speech of her life, praising her failure sister, admitting she had been wrong, promising to be more supportive. Our family ate it up, praising her humility. Marcus beamed with pride at his wonderful, gracious wife, and I sat there, cashier job and studio apartment and all, holding all the cards for the first time in my life. Victoria met my eyes once during her speech, and in that moment she understood. This was only the beginning. I had 6 months of evidence, a co-conspirator in her lover, and nothing left to lose. Her perfect life was now mine to control. The failure had finally learned how to succeed, and the lesson had cost Victoria everything she thought made her superior. The turkey was delicious that year. Best Thanksgiving dinner I ever had. The week after Thanksgiving, Victoria called me 17 times. I answered none of them. She left voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to terrified. Harper, we need to talk about the terms. Then, please, I did everything you asked. Finally, you're destroying my marriage and you know it. I deleted each message after listening once, savoring the panic in her voice like expensive wine. Marcus had started asking questions. I knew this because Jason told me during our Wednesday coffee meeting at the cafe 3 blocks from my apartment. We had been meeting weekly since July, coordinating our moves like chess players, and the routine had become almost comfortable. He slid into the booth across from me, ordered his usual black coffee, and pulled out his phone. She's unraveling, he said, showing me screenshots of Victoria's texts to him. Despite her promise to end things, she had been messaging him constantly, begging him to tell her what I was planning. Did you respond? I asked, sipping my chai latte. Once, I told her that she should probably be more worried about her husband than about me. Jason's smile was grim. Marcus came into my gym yesterday, asked me if I knew anything about Victoria acting strange, said she's been distant, jumpy, checking her phone constantly. What did you tell him? That women are complicated and he should probably just talk to her. Jason leaned back, studying my face. Are you really going to blow up her whole life, or was Thanksgiving just a warning shot? I considered the question carefully. The truth was, I hadn't fully decided. Holding Victoria's secrets gave me power, but using them would destroy that power. The threat was often more valuable than the execution. Depends on what she does next, I said finally. If she learned her lesson, maybe I let her suffer with the knowledge that I could destroy everything at any moment, if she doesn't. I left the sentence unfinished. She's transferring the money tomorrow, Jason mentioned. $100,000. I saw the bank notification on her computer screen when I was at her office last week. That detail made me pause. You went to her office? She called me there, said it was an emergency. He had the grace to look slightly ashamed. I know we agreed no contact, but she was hysterical, crying about how you were ruining her life, how she didn't understand what you wanted from her. And what did you tell her? That she brought this on herself. Jason's expression hardened. Harper, I need you to understand something. When I started this thing with Victoria, I was genuinely attracted to her. She was everything you weren't. Confident, successful, powerful. I thought I had upgraded. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But spending 6 months watching her lie to everyone, seeing how she treats service workers, hearing how she talks about you when she thinks no one important is listening, I realized I didn't upgrade. I downgraded to someone who looked better on paper but was rotten underneath. Is this your way of asking me to take you back? The question came out sharper than I intended. Jason shook his head quickly. No, I know I don't deserve that. I just want you to know that whatever you decide to do to Victoria, I'll support it. She earned every bit of karma coming her way. That conversation was interrupted by my phone buzzing. Victoria, again. This time I answered, putting her on speaker so Jason could hear. What do you want? We need to meet, Victoria said without preamble. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the stress underneath. Marcus is asking questions, real questions, about my business trips, about my schedule, about money missing from his account. And what did you tell him? Nothing yet. But Harper, he's not stupid. He's going to figure out something is wrong, and when he does, you tell him the truth, I interrupted. Tell him about Jason, about the affair, about stealing from his business accounts. Take responsibility for once in your life. You know I can't do that. Victoria's voice cracked. It would destroy everything. That's kind of the point, I said pleasantly. You spent 20 minutes at Thanksgiving destroying me for entertainment. Why shouldn't I return the favor? Because I'm your sister. The appeal to familial loyalty might have worked before Thanksgiving, before she had looked our entire family in the eye and called me worthless. You stopped being my sister the moment you seduced my boyfriend at your anniversary party, I replied. You stopped being my sister every time you made me feel small to make yourself feel big. Biology doesn't excuse cruelty, Victoria. There was a long silence. Then, what do you want? Really want? There has to be something. I looked at Jason across the table. He nodded slightly, giving me permission for what I was about to do. I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything, I said slowly. Your perfect marriage, your perfect job, your perfect reputation. I want you to know what it's like to be the family disappointment, to have everyone look at you with pity or contempt. I want you to feel what you made me feel for years. You're insane, Victoria whispered. You're actually insane. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe I'm just finally standing up for myself. You have until Friday to tell Marcus the truth yourself. If you don't, I will. And Victoria, when I tell him, I'll make sure everyone else finds out too. Every detail, every lie, every dollar you stole. I hung up before she could respond. Jason was quiet for a moment. You're really going to do it. She won't tell him, I said confidently. Victoria has never taken responsibility for anything in her life. She'll try to find another way out, probably try to discredit me or claim I'm lying, which is exactly what I'm counting on. Why? I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were months of documentation, bank records showing Victoria's theft from Marcus's business accounts, hotel receipts, flight confirmations, even photos Jason had taken of them together at her request. Because when she denies everything and calls me crazy, I'll have proof. Undeniable, documented proof. And that will hurt her more than if she had just told the truth. Jason leaned forward to look at the screen, his eyes widening as he scrolled through the evidence. You've been planning this since the beginning. Since before the beginning, I corrected. Since the day you told me about the affair. I knew Victoria would eventually do something public to humiliate me. It's her pattern. She builds herself up by tearing others down. I just had to wait for the right moment, document everything, and let her destroy herself. That's, Jason searched for the word, brilliant and terrifying. Thank you. I closed the laptop. Now, about Friday. I need you to do something for me. The next few days moved like pieces on a chessboard. Victoria tried calling our parents, probably to poison them against me before I could reveal her secrets. But I had already spoken to them on Monday, expressing concern about Victoria's stress levels, mentioning that I was worried about her marriage, planting seeds of doubt that would bloom when the truth came out. Our mother had been sympathetic, saying Victoria had seemed off lately. Our father had mentioned noticing tension between Victoria and Marcus at Thanksgiving. Wednesday brought an unexpected development. Marcus showed up at my workplace, the grocery store where I had been a cashier for 4 years. He waited until my shift ended, then approached me in the parking lot. "Harper, can we talk?" His face was drawn, tired. This was a man who hadn't slept properly in days. "Of course," I said, unlocking my car. "Want to sit?" We sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, a vehicle Victoria had once called an embarrassment with wheels, and Marcus told me his suspicions. Victoria had been acting strange for months. Money was missing from their accounts. She had been taking calls in other rooms, hiding her phone screen, making excuses for why she couldn't attend his family events, and after Thanksgiving, everything had gotten worse. "I think she's having an affair," Marcus said finally, the words clearly painful to speak. "I think she has been for a while, and I think you know something about it." This was the moment. I could tell him everything right now, destroy Victoria's life in this parking lot under fluorescent lights. Or I could wait, let her make the next move, see if she would finally choose honesty. "What makes you think I know anything?" I asked carefully. "Thanksgiving. What you said about texts on her iPad. The way she reacted." Marcus turned to look at me directly. "Harper, I've known Victoria for 8 years. I've never seen her that scared. And then she stood up and gave that speech about you, praising you, apologizing. It wasn't like her. It felt forced, like someone was making her do it." Smart man. "Marcus, this is between you and Victoria. Whatever is going on in your marriage..." "Please," he interrupted. "I need to know. Is she cheating on me?" The desperation in his voice was real. Marcus was a good man who loved his wife, who had built a life with her, who deserved better than what Victoria had given him. But telling him now would be mercy, and Victoria didn't deserve mercy. "You should ask her," I said gently. "Have a real conversation. Tell her what you just told me, that you know something is wrong, that you see her pulling away, that you deserve honesty. Give her a chance to tell you the truth herself. And if she doesn't, then you'll know what kind of person you married." Marcus left looking worse than when he arrived, and I felt a small pang of guilt. Not for Victoria, but for him. He was collateral damage in this war, an innocent casualty. But Victoria had made him collateral the moment she decided her affair was more important than her marriage vows. I was just helping him see what had been true all along. Friday arrived with text message from Victoria at 6 in the morning. I told him everything. "Are you happy now?" I sat up in bed reading the message 3 times. She had actually done it. Told Marcus about the affair, presumably. But had she told him everything? The theft, the abortion, the months of lies? I doubted it. Victoria specialized in partial truths, giving just enough information to seem honest while hiding the worst parts. My phone rang. "Jason, have you seen Victoria's Instagram?" he asked without greeting. I pulled up her profile. The most recent post was from 20 minutes ago, a photo of her and Marcus from their wedding day, with a caption about working through difficult times and how strong relationships survive challenges. The comments were already flooding in, friends offering support, family members sending prayers, acquaintances who love drama asking if everything was okay. "She's trying to control the narrative," Jason observed, making it look like they're working through normal marriage stuff instead of her affair. Smart, I admitted grudgingly, but also stupid, because now when the full truth comes out, she'll look like she was lying in this post too. "Are you going to let the full truth come out?" "That depends on what Marcus knows," I said, getting out of bed and heading for my laptop. If she actually told him everything, then maybe I back off, but if she gave him a sanitized version... I pulled up my email drafts. Then I help him understand what he's really dealing with. Jason was quiet for a moment. Harper, there's something else you should know. Victoria called me last night after she talked to Marcus. She was crying, saying she had told him about us, that he was devastated but willing to try counseling. She said she felt relieved finally being honest. Did she mention the money? I asked. Or the pregnancy? No. She said she told him about the affair and that she had been confused and made a terrible mistake. So Victoria had told partial truth, enough to seem honest, not enough to fully expose herself. It was so perfectly her that I almost laughed. She still thought she could manage the situation, control the damage, emerge with most of her life intact. She's going to counseling with him, Jason continued, playing the repentant wife, probably planning to slowly work her way back into his good graces while making sure the really bad stuff stays hidden. Then she hasn't learned anything, I said, opening the email draft addressed to Marcus. It contained everything. Bank records, hotel receipts, medical records from the abortion clinic that Jason had photographed when Victoria carelessly left them in her car. She's still lying, still manipulating, still thinking she can scheme her way out of consequences. Are you really going to send that to Marcus? Jason asked quietly. After she finally told him about the affair? Isn't that enough? I thought about Thanksgiving, about standing in front of my family while Victoria systematically destroyed my character for entertainment, about years of subtle digs and public humiliations, of being made to feel less than, of watching her take credit for being the successful daughter while treating me like a charity case. About her seducing Jason just because she could, just because she saw I was happy and decided I didn't deserve to be. No, I said firmly. It's not enough. She told him the bare minimum to avoid looking like a complete monster. That's not honesty. That's strategy. She needs to face real consequences for once in her life. My finger hovered over the send button. But I'll give her one more chance. I'll tell her she has until Monday to come completely clean with Marcus. Everything, not just the affair. If she does, I delete all of this and we move on. If she doesn't, then you burn her entire life down. Jason finished. Harper, I know she hurt you. Believe me, I know. But are you sure this is what you want? Once you send that email, there's no taking it back. I'm sure, I said, but I didn't press send. Not yet. Instead, I called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. What do you want now? Isn't destroying my marriage enough? That's the thing, Victoria. I didn't destroy your marriage. You did. I just held up a mirror. I paused, letting that sink in. But we're not done. You told Marcus about the affair, which is good. But you didn't tell him everything. I told him what he needed to know. You told him what you wanted him to know. There's a difference. I opened the attachment in my email draft, looking at the bank statement showing $50,000 transferred from Marcus's business account to Victoria's personal account over 6 months. You didn't tell him about the money you stole. You didn't tell him about the pregnancy. You didn't tell him about planning to leave him for Jason. Victoria's breathing became audible over the phone. How do you... I know everything, Victoria. I've always known everything. That's what you never understood. While you were busy thinking you were smarter than everyone else, I was documenting every single thing you did wrong. I took a breath. So here's what's going to happen. You have until Monday at noon to tell Marcus the complete truth. Every detail. Every dollar. Every lie. If you do that, I'll delete all my evidence and leave you alone to deal with the consequences you created. And if I don't? Her voice was small, defeated. Then Monday afternoon, Marcus gets an email with enough evidence to take you for everything in the divorce. Your job gets a call about the company credit card you've been using for personal expenses, and our family gets a very detailed explanation of exactly who you really are. I softened my voice slightly. This is your last chance to choose honesty, Victoria. Take it. I hung up before she could respond, then sat staring at my laptop screen. The email was ready. The evidence was organized. And in 72 hours, I would know if Victoria was capable of real honesty or if she was going to force me to destroy her completely. Either way, The girl who had been called a failure at Thanksgiving was now holding all the power, and she was going to use it. Monday morning arrived with November rain hammering against my apartment windows. I had worked the early shift at the grocery store, scanning items and making small talk with customers while my phone sat heavy in my pocket, waiting for confirmation that Victoria had told Marcus everything. The deadline was noon. It was now 11:45. My phone buzzed at 11:53. Not Victoria. Marcus. Can we meet? Today, as soon as possible, please. The message was followed by an address I didn't recognize, a coffee shop in a neighborhood neither of us frequented. Neutral territory. I texted back, 1 hour. Then I clocked out, telling my supervisor I had a family emergency. Not entirely a lie. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back corner booth with 2 untouched cups of coffee growing cold in front of him. He looked like he had aged 5 years in 5 days. His usually neat hair was uncombed, his designer polo shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that no amount of sleep would fix. This was the face of a man whose world had shattered. "Thank you for coming," he said as I slid into the booth across from him. His voice was hoarse, probably from crying or yelling or both. "Harper, I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that?" "I'll try," I said carefully, not committing to anything until I knew what he was asking. "Victoria told me she had an affair with your ex-boyfriend, Jason. She said it lasted 6 months and ended after Thanksgiving when you confronted her about it." Marcus's hands were shaking around his coffee cup. Is that the truth? The whole truth? The moment had arrived. Victoria had clearly told him part of the story. Enough to seem honest, not enough to fully expose herself. She had gambled that I would back down now that she had admitted to the affair, that I would consider it enough punishment and leave the rest buried. She had gambled wrong. "No," I said simply. "That's not the whole truth." Marcus closed his eyes like I had physically struck him. "I was afraid you'd say that. What else is there?" I pulled out my phone and opened a folder of screenshots. The affair wasn't 6 months. It was closer to 18 months. It started at your 3rd anniversary party. I slid the phone across the table, showing him texts from Victoria to Jason dated over a 1.5 years ago. She's been lying about the timeline to make it seem like less of a betrayal. Marcus scrolled through the messages, his jaw clenching tighter with each one. Jesus Christ, our anniversary party, while I was giving a toast about how lucky I was to have her. He looked up at me. "What else?" "She's been taking money from your business accounts, about $50,000 over the past year." I pulled up the bank records on my laptop. "She used it to pay for hotels, trips, gifts for Jason. She has a separate credit card you don't know about that she's been using for personal expenses and billing to your company." "Show me," Marcus said, his voice now cold, clinical. The emotional man was being replaced by the businessman who had built a chain of dental practices from scratch. I turned the laptop around. He studied the records with the focused intensity of someone who understood numbers intimately. "This is embezzlement," he said finally. "She's been stealing from my business." "There's more," I said quietly. "Last year, Victoria got pregnant. She had an abortion without telling you because she wasn't sure if the baby was yours or Jason's." I showed him the medical records Jason had photographed. Patient name, Victoria Ashford Marcus. Date of procedure. Clinic name. "She never told you because she was planning to leave you for Jason once she had enough money saved up." Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "She was pregnant with my child, or someone else's child, and she just ended it. Without even telling me, without giving me a chance to." He couldn't finish the sentence. The coffee shop around us continued its normal rhythm, espresso machines hissing, conversations humming, rain drumming against windows. But in our corner booth, everything had stopped. "Why?" Marcus asked eventually. "Why are you telling me all this? You could have just let me believe the version she told me. We would have tried counseling, maybe worked through it. Why destroy whatever chance we had at saving our marriage?" "Because you deserve to know the truth," I said. "And because Victoria hasn't changed. She's still lying, still manipulating, still thinking she can control the narrative. If I let her get away with telling you a sanitized version, she learns nothing. She just learns to be a better liar next time." I paused. And because 2 weeks ago she stood in front of our entire family and told them I was a worthless failure who would die alone. She humiliated me for entertainment, Marcus, while you sat there and nodded along. His face flushed. I didn't mean— You did, though, I interrupted gently. You've always looked down on me just like she does, the cashier sister-in-law who couldn't get her life together. You felt sorry for me, which is almost worse than contempt. So no, I'm not protecting your marriage. I'm making sure Victoria finally faces consequences for treating people like they're disposable. Marcus was quiet for a long time, processing everything I had told him. Finally, he asked, What are you going to do with all this information? Are you going to tell other people? Your family? My business partners? That depends on what you do, I said. If you divorce her and make sure she doesn't get to walk away with half of everything you built, then this stays between us. But if you try to forgive her, if you let her convince you that she's sorry and wants to work on the marriage, then yes, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who Victoria Ashford really is. That's blackmail, Marcus said, but there was no heat in his accusation. That's insurance, I corrected. Victoria is very good at playing the victim when she needs to. Very good at making people feel sorry for her, at convincing them that her bad behavior was actually someone else's fault. I'm making sure that doesn't happen this time. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. David, it's Marcus. I need you to file divorce papers today. Yes, today. Full disclosure of assets, and I want everything documented. He paused, listening. Infidelity, financial fraud, and whatever else you can think of. Make it as ugly as necessary. Another pause. No, we're not trying counseling. This marriage is over. He hung up and looked at me. Satisfied? I'm sorry it came to this, I said, and meant it. For what it's worth, you deserve better than what she gave you. So do you, Marcus replied. I'm sorry I didn't see that before. You were never a failure, Harper. You were just surrounded by people who made you feel like one so they could feel superior. After Marcus left to meet with his attorney, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at my laptop screen. The evidence that had taken 6 months to gather would now be used in a divorce proceeding. Victoria's perfect life was officially over, but something about the victory felt hollow. I had wanted her to hurt the way she hurt me, to feel small and worthless and judged. But watching Marcus's face as I showed him proof of his wife's betrayal, seeing a good man's heart break in real time, made me question whether this was really justice or just revenge. My phone rang. Victoria. I answered. I know you told him everything, she said without preamble. Marcus just served me with divorce papers at my office, in front of my colleagues. Do you have any idea how humiliating? Yes, I interrupted. I have a very good idea how humiliating that feels, because you did the exact same thing to me at Thanksgiving, except I didn't deserve it. I want you to know that you've destroyed our entire family, Victoria continued, her voice shaking with rage. Mom is crying, Dad is furious, everyone is taking sides, and it's all because you couldn't keep your mouth shut about private matters between a husband and wife. Private matters? I repeated incredulously. You had an 18-month affair with my ex-boyfriend, stole $50,000 from your husband, and got an abortion without telling him. Those aren't private matters, Victoria. Those are crimes and betrayals that Marcus had every right to know about. You're so self-righteous, she spat, acting like you're some kind of hero when really you're just bitter and jealous. You've always been jealous of me, of my success, of everything I have. And now that you've ruined my life, you probably feel powerful, don't you? No, I said honestly. I feel tired, I feel sad, and I feel like I just watched my sister choose lies over honesty for the 100th time and finally face consequences for it. Consequences, Victoria laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it? I'm losing my husband, my house, probably my job when word gets out about the company credit card. Our family is fractured beyond repair. And for what? Because I called you a failure at dinner? You've been calling me a failure my whole life, I said quietly. Not just at Thanksgiving. Every family gathering, every phone call, every chance you got to make yourself look better by making me look worse. Thanksgiving was just the moment you did it publicly enough that I could finally make you pay for it. There was a long silence. Then Victoria said something I never expected. You're right. Her voice had changed, lost its defensive edge. I've treated you terribly for years. I don't even know why anymore. Maybe because you were the younger sister and I could. Maybe because treating you badly made me feel powerful. Maybe because somewhere deep down I was jealous of you. Jealous of me? I almost laughed. You're the successful one, Victoria. The Harvard graduate with the corner office and the perfect life. Perfect life that I built on lies, she said. Perfect life that required me to constantly tear down everyone around me to feel secure. Harper, I'm not saying what you did was wrong. I'm saying I finally understand why you did it. And I'm sorry. Really, genuinely sorry for who I've been to you. The apology caught me completely off guard. In 32 years, I had never heard Victoria sincerely apologize for anything. It's too late for sorry, I said finally. The divorce is filed. Your marriage is over. Our family is fractured. Sorry doesn't fix any of that. I know, Victoria said. But I needed to say it anyway. And Harper? You were right about one thing. I did need to face consequences. Maybe this is exactly what I deserved. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my car in the coffee shop parking lot, rain now pouring down hard enough that I couldn't see through the windshield. My phone buzzed with messages from family members who had heard about the divorce. My mother wanted to know what happened. My father demanded I call him immediately. Cousins and aunts and uncles all suddenly invested in drama they had ignored for years, while Victoria systematically tore me down. I ignored all of them and called Jason instead. It's done, I told him when he answered. Marcus knows everything. He's filing for divorce. Victoria's life as she knew it is over. How do you feel? Jason asked. I don't know, I admitted. I thought I'd feel triumphant or vindicated or something, but mostly I just feel empty. That's normal, he said. Revenge doesn't actually make you feel better. It just makes you feel like you did something. Then what was the point? I asked, suddenly exhausted. What was the point of all this if it doesn't make the hurt go away? The point, Jason said carefully, was that Victoria needed to understand that actions have consequences, that she couldn't treat people badly forever without something eventually coming back on her. Whether that makes you feel better or not is secondary to the fact that it was necessary. I drove home through the rain, thinking about necessity and consequences, and whether I had become the villain in my own story. The apartment was cold and dark when I arrived. I turned on lights, made tea, sat on my secondhand couch that Victoria had once mocked as something from a dumpster, and tried to figure out what I felt. The truth was complicated. I was glad Victoria would face consequences. I was glad Marcus knew the truth. I was even glad that our family would finally have to acknowledge that their golden child was deeply flawed. But I wasn't happy. Victory didn't taste like I thought it would. My phone rang again. My mother. I answered. Harper Elizabeth Ashford, what have you done? Her voice was thick with tears. I told Marcus the truth about his wife, I said calmly. That's what I did. You destroyed your sister's marriage. You aired private family business. How could you be so cruel? How could I be so cruel? I repeated slowly. Mom, did you not hear what Victoria said to me at Thanksgiving? Did you not see her spend 20 minutes telling everyone I was worthless while you all sat there and let her? That was just sibling rivalry, my mother protested weakly. That's how sisters are sometimes. No, I said firmly. That's how abusive sisters are. That's how bullies are. Victoria has been cruel to me my entire life, and you've always excused it as sibling rivalry, or said I was being too sensitive. But I'm done being the family punching bag. I'm done letting her treat me badly just because we share DNA. So you decided to punish her by ruining her life? My mother asked. She ruined her own life by having an affair, stealing from her husband, and lying constantly, I corrected. I just made sure Marcus knew the truth before he wasted more years on someone who didn't value him. If you want to be angry at someone, be angry at Victoria for betraying her marriage vows. My mother started crying harder. This family is falling apart. Your father and I are supposed to take sides now? Choose between our daughters? You don't have to choose, I said tiredly. You can love us both while still acknowledging that Victoria did terrible things and deserves consequences for them. That's actually what good parents do. They hold their children accountable while still loving them. I need to go, my mother said abruptly. Your father wants to talk to you. There was shuffling on the other end, then my father's voice, tight with controlled anger. Harper, your mother is very upset. This situation with Victoria and Marcus has gotten completely out of hand. It got out of hand the moment Victoria decided to cheat on her husband for 18 months. I replied. That was between Victoria and Marcus, my father said. You had no right to interfere in their marriage. Actually, Dad, Marcus had every right to know that his wife was cheating on him and stealing from him. I just provided information. What he chose to do with it was his decision. I paused. And before you lecture me about loyalty, remember that Victoria showed no loyalty to me at Thanksgiving when she humiliated me in front of everyone. That's different. How? I interrupted. How is it different? Because she's your successful daughter and I'm just the cashier. Because her life matters more than mine? Because she's earned the right to treat people badly without consequences? My father was silent for a moment. You've made your point, Harper. Victoria was wrong to speak to you that way at Thanksgiving. But what you've done is disproportionate. You've ended her marriage. Her affair ended her marriage, I said. Her lies ended her marriage. Her stealing ended her marriage. I just made sure Marcus had all the facts before making decisions about his life. If their marriage was strong enough to survive the truth, then it would have. But it wasn't, because it was built on deception. You sound so cold, my father said quietly. This isn't like you. Maybe this is exactly like me, I replied. Maybe you just never paid enough attention to notice who I really was because you were too busy praising Victoria and disappointed in me. I hung up before he could respond, then turned off my phone entirely. I needed silence. I needed space. I needed to figure out if the person I had become in pursuit of justice was someone I could live with. The next 2 weeks transformed my family dynamics permanently. Marcus's divorce attorney moved with impressive speed, filing motions to freeze Victoria's access to joint accounts, demanding full asset disclosure, and requesting forensic accounting to track exactly how much money she had stolen. Victoria hired her own attorney, but the evidence I had provided Marcus was ironclad. There would be no favorable settlement for her. What surprised me was how the family fractured not in half, but into thirds. My parents tried to remain neutral, hosting neither daughter but calling both, attempting to maintain relationships while refusing to explicitly take sides. This satisfied no one. Victoria's friends and some of our cousins rallied around her, creating a narrative where she was the victim of a vindictive sister who couldn't stand seeing her successful. My friends and coworkers formed a smaller but fiercer support system, reminding me constantly that Victoria had brought this on herself. And then there was Marcus's family. His mother called me personally 3 days after the divorce filing. Harper, this is Janet Marcus. We've met a few times at holidays. Her voice was warm but cautious. I wanted to thank you for telling Marcus the truth about Victoria. I know that couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted, but he deserved to know. He did, Janet agreed. And I wanted you to know that if Victoria or her supporters try to paint you as the villain in this, Marcus's entire family will set the record straight. What she did was unconscionable, and you were brave to expose it. The conversation left me feeling oddly validated. I hadn't destroyed Victoria's marriage out of spite or jealousy. I had exposed truths that needed exposing, but the weight of what I had set in motion still pressed heavy on my chest. The breaking point came 2 Sundays after the divorce filing. My mother called, voice strained, and said there would be a family meeting at their house that evening. Everyone would be there. Attendance was mandatory. Mom, I don't think... 7 o'clock, Harper. Both you and Victoria will be civil, or you can both find somewhere else to spend Christmas. I arrived at 6:55 to find Victoria's car already in the driveway. My stomach clenched. This would be the first time we had been in the same room since everything exploded. I sat in my car for 3 minutes, gathering courage, then walked to the door. My father opened it before I could knock. "Living room," he said tersely. "Everyone's waiting." The living room felt smaller than I remembered. Victoria sat on one couch, her lawyer David something beside her. Marcus sat on the opposite couch with his attorney. My parents occupied chairs. 2 empty seats remained, one next to Victoria, one next to no one. I chose the isolated seat. "Thank you all for coming," my father began, sounding exhausted. "This family has been torn apart for 2 weeks, and your mother and I have decided enough is enough. We're going to settle this tonight, as a family, and move forward." "There's nothing to settle," Marcus said coldly. "Victoria cheated on me, stole from me, and lied about everything for over a year. We're getting divorced. That's not negotiable." "We understand that," my mother said gently. "But you're still married right now, and we need to address how this is affecting the entire family." "Harper," she turned to me, "why did you feel it was necessary to tell Marcus about Victoria's affair?" The question was clearly designed to put me on the defensive. I took a breath before answering. Because Marcus deserved to know the truth about his marriage before making decisions about his future. And because Victoria had already demonstrated that she wouldn't tell him herself, she only admitted to a partial truth after I forced her hand. "And you felt entitled to make that decision," Victoria's lawyer interjected, "to insert yourself into a private marriage?" "I felt obligated to help someone who was being lied to by my sister," I corrected. "If I had known someone was stealing from you or lying to you, wouldn't you want me to tell you?" "This isn't about me," he replied. "This is about you deliberately destroying your sister's life." "Her life was destroyed the moment she decided to cheat and steal," Marcus said, his voice sharp. "Harper just illuminated the truth. Victoria destroyed her own life through her choices." "Let's not forget," Victoria spoke for the first time, her voice controlled but barely masking fury, "that Harper coordinated with Jason, my affair partner, for 6 months. She used him to gather information about me. That's premeditated. That's calculated. That's not a concerned sister, that's a conspiracy." "Jason contacted me," I said calmly. "After you seduced him at your anniversary party and started an affair with him while he was still my boyfriend. He felt guilty about what you had convinced him to do. So yes, when he told me about your affair, I asked him to document it. Because I knew you would lie about everything if you ever got caught." "This is insane," Victoria said, standing abruptly. "I'm not sitting here being attacked by everyone. I made a mistake. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I should have been honest with Marcus sooner. But I don't deserve to have my entire life destroyed over it." "You didn't just have an affair," Marcus said, his calm more frightening than any shouting would have been. "You stole $50,000 from my business. You got pregnant and terminated the pregnancy without telling me because you didn't know if the child was mine. You planned to leave me once you had squirreled away enough money. Those aren't mistakes, Victoria. Those are deliberate, calculated betrayals." The room fell silent. My parents looked at each other, clearly not having known the full extent of Victoria's actions. "Pregnant?" my mother whispered. "You were pregnant?" Victoria's composure cracked. "That was private medical information. Harper had no right." "I had every right," I interrupted, "because you were lying to your husband about it. Marcus had a right to know that you aborted what might have been his child without even telling him you were pregnant." "This is why I wanted this meeting," my father said, rubbing his temples. "We need to establish some boundaries moving forward. Victoria, you clearly made serious mistakes that have consequences. Marcus has every right to divorce you. Harper, you had valid concerns, but perhaps questionable methods of addressing them. Can we agree that moving forward, everyone will handle their business privately and stop involving the entire family?" "No," I said clearly, "because that's what you've always done. Swept problems under the rug and pretended everything was fine as long as it wasn't public. Victoria has treated me terribly for years, and you enabled it by pretending it was normal sibling rivalry. Well, I'm done pretending. And I'm done protecting Victoria from the consequences of her own actions." "So, what do you want?" Victoria asked. "What's your endgame here, Harper? You've destroyed my marriage, humiliated me in front of everyone, turned our family against each other. What more do you possibly want? The question hung in the air. What did I want? I had set out to make Victoria understand what it felt like to be humiliated and diminished. Mission accomplished. But the victory felt hollow, the vindication incomplete. I want, I said slowly, for you to understand that people matter. That you can't treat people like they're disposable just because they don't meet your standards of success. I want you to understand that calling me a failure at Thanksgiving wasn't just mean. It was cruel. And I want you to take real responsibility for your actions instead of playing the victim. I am taking responsibility, Victoria said. I've apologized to Marcus. I'm going through a divorce. I'm losing everything. What more do you want from me? An apology to me, I said. A real one. Not the forced speech you gave at Thanksgiving after I caught you, but a genuine acknowledgement that you've treated me terribly, and it was wrong. Victoria stared at me for a long moment. Then, shocking everyone in the room, she sat back down and said, "You're right. Harper, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for calling you a failure. I'm sorry for years of making you feel less than. I'm sorry for seducing Jason just because I could, just because I wanted to prove I was better than you. I'm sorry for treating you like you didn't matter." She paused. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it. The apology was so unexpected, so seemingly sincere, that I didn't know how to respond. Marcus looked equally surprised. My parents were crying quietly. Thank you, I finally managed. That's all I wanted. For you to acknowledge what you did and take responsibility for it. Does this mean we can move forward? My mother asked hopefully. Can we try to heal as a family? That depends on Victoria, Marcus said. The divorce is happening regardless. But how ugly it gets depends on whether she fights it or accepts responsibility. If she contests the asset division or tries to claim she deserves half of everything despite stealing from me, then this gets much worse. Victoria's lawyer leaned over to whisper to her. She shook her head. I'm not fighting the divorce, she said. I don't want alimony. I'll accept whatever asset division is fair given that I stole from you. I just want this to be over. It was Marcus's turn to look surprised. His attorney raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Then we can keep this relatively civil, Marcus said. I want my business protected and reimbursement for what you stole, but I'm not trying to leave you destitute. Despite everything, we were married for 8 years. That has to count for something. The tension in the room eased slightly. My father cleared his throat. So we're agreed? This stays between the people in this room. We handle the divorce quietly, we don't involve extended family or air this publicly, and we all try to move forward? Agreed, Victoria said. Agreed, Marcus echoed. Harper? My mother prompted. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to insist that everyone know exactly what Victoria had done. But I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being angry, tired of carrying the weight of being the family truth teller. Agreed, I finally said. On one condition. Victoria publicly acknowledges, at least to our family, that I'm not a failure, that my life has value even though it doesn't look like hers. Done, Victoria said immediately. You're not a failure, Harper. You never were. I was just too insecure to see it. The meeting ended shortly after. As everyone filed out, Marcus caught my arm. Thank you, he said quietly, for telling me the truth. It hurt like hell, but I needed to know. I'm sorry it hurt, I replied. For what it's worth, you deserve someone better than what Victoria gave you. So do you, he said. And Harper? That boyfriend of yours, Jason? If he's half as smart as I think he is, he'll fight like hell to get you back. Because anyone who coordinates a 6-month intelligence operation with their ex-girlfriend is someone worth keeping. He smiled slightly. You're not a failure. You're actually kind of terrifying in the best way. As I drove home that night, I felt something shift inside me. The anger that had driven me for 6 months was finally beginning to ease. I had done what I set out to do. Forced Victoria to face consequences, protected Marcus from further lies, and established new boundaries in my family. The cost had been high. Family relationships were fractured, some possibly beyond repair. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being blamed for the fracture. Victoria had cracked the foundation. I had just been the one willing to point it out. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "How did the family meeting go?" I replied. "Better than expected." Victoria apologized. "Marcus is being reasonable. My parents are overwhelmed but trying. We might actually survive this." "And you?" he asked. "How are you doing?" I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building, considering the question. How was I doing? "I'm okay," I typed. "I'm not happy exactly, but I'm okay, and that's enough for now." "Want company?" Jason asked. I could bring takeout, and we could not talk about any of this for a few hours. "That sounds perfect," I replied. An hour later, we sat on my dumpster couch eating Chinese food and watching a mindless action movie. Jason didn't try to analyze what I was feeling or push me to talk about Victoria. He just sat beside me, a steady presence that asked for nothing. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt like maybe everything was going to be all right. The divorce proceedings moved surprisingly quickly once Victoria stopped fighting them. Marcus's forensic accountant documented exactly $53,217 that Victoria had stolen over 18 months. She agreed to repay it from her own assets, which included liquidating her investment accounts and selling the jewelry Marcus had given her over the years. She kept her car and personal belongings. He kept the house, the dental practices, and his retirement accounts. The settlement was finalized in 6 weeks, unusually fast for a divorce with significant assets. What Victoria hadn't anticipated were the professional consequences. Her employer, Millennium Pharmaceuticals, conducted an internal audit after an anonymous tip about misuse of company resources. They discovered she had been using her corporate credit card for personal expenses disguised as business costs. Hotels where she met Jason, dinners for two billed as client meetings, even a weekend trip to Miami charged as a pharmaceutical conference that didn't exist. She was fired 3 weeks after the divorce filing. I didn't send that anonymous tip, but I knew who did. Marcus's attorney had access to all the evidence I provided, and apparently decided Victoria's employer deserved to know what kind of person they had in a director position. Victoria called me the night she was fired, drunk and crying. "You've taken everything from me," she slurred. "My husband, my job, my reputation. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" "I didn't want any of this," I said honestly. "I wanted you to stop treating me like garbage. I wanted you to face consequences for your actions. I never wanted to destroy your entire life." "Well, you did," she spat. "You completely destroyed it. I hope you can live with yourself." The call ended there. I sat holding my phone, questioning once again whether I had taken things too far. Jason, who was sitting beside me when the call came, saw my expression. "Don't," he said firmly. "Don't you dare feel guilty for what happened to her. Every single consequence she's facing is because of choices she made. You didn't make her have an affair. You didn't make her steal. You didn't make her use company resources for personal reasons. She did all of that herself." "But I exposed it," I said. "I'm the reason Marcus knows. I'm the reason her company found out." "And if you hadn't?" Jason challenged. "How long would she have kept lying? How many more dollars would she have stolen? How many more people would she have hurt?" He took my hand. "Harper, I know you're not cruel. I know you took no joy in watching her life fall apart. But sometimes good people have to do hard things to stop bad people from continuing to hurt others." The hardest part came 2 weeks later at my niece's birthday party. Victoria's stepdaughter Emma was turning 7, and despite the divorce, Marcus insisted on having a family party because Emma had grown attached to our side of the family. "She's innocent in all this," he explained when he called to invite me. "And she keeps asking where Aunt Harper is." I arrived to find a house transformed for a child's party. Balloons, streamers, a princess cake. Emma ran up to hug me the moment I walked in, chattering about her new bike and the magic show Marcus had hired. Victoria sat at a table in the corner, noticeably thinner, her designer clothes hanging loose on her frame. She looked up when I entered, our eyes meeting across the room. Neither of us smiled. For 3 hours, we existed in the same space without speaking, both focused on Emma, both pretending the other wasn't there. It was my mother who finally pushed us together. "You two need to talk," she said. guiding us toward the patio while Marcus supervised the magic show inside. I don't care if you become best friends. I don't care if you ever fully forgive each other, but you need to be able to exist in the same room without this level of tension. On the patio, Victoria and I stood 3 feet apart, both staring at the yard rather than each other. "You look terrible," I said finally. "Thanks," Victoria replied dryly. "I've been sleeping great, eating well, and my life is absolutely wonderful." "I didn't mean it as an insult," I said. "I meant you look like you're not taking care of yourself." "Why would I?" she asked, still not looking at me. "I lost my husband, my job, my home, my reputation. Taking care of myself seems pretty pointless right now." "Don't do that," I said. "Don't act like a victim when you're just facing consequences." "I know," Victoria said quietly. "I know I did this to myself, but knowing that doesn't make it hurt less. And knowing that my own sister orchestrated my downfall makes it hurt even more." We were both quiet for a moment. Then Victoria said, "I've been in therapy. Court-mandated as part of the divorce, but I'm actually going beyond the required sessions. And my therapist says I have narcissistic tendencies, probably stemming from being the golden child who never faced consequences for bad behavior." "That's good," I said, surprised, "that you're working on it." "Is it?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "Because right now it just means I get to be fully aware of what a terrible person I've been while dealing with all the consequences of being that terrible person. It's not exactly fun." "Change never is," I replied. "But maybe this is what you needed, a complete collapse to rebuild from." "Maybe," Victoria agreed. "Or maybe I'm just broken now and this is what I deserve." She finally turned to look at me. "Do you hate me? Honestly?" The question caught me off guard. Did I hate her? "No," I said slowly. "I'm angry at you. I'm hurt by how you treated me for years. But I don't hate you. You're still my sister, even if we'll never have the relationship I wanted us to have." "For what it's worth," Victoria said, "I am sorry. Not just for what I said at Thanksgiving, but for years of making you feel less than. You were never a failure, Harper. You were just different from me, and I couldn't handle that someone could be happy without following the path I chose." "Thank you," I said. "That means something." We stood together on the patio for a few more minutes, not talking, just existing in shared space. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was a beginning towards something that might eventually resemble peace. Inside, Emma's party continued. When we returned, Marcus caught my eye and mouthed, "Thank you." My parents looked relieved to see Victoria and me in the same room without tension crackling between us. And Jason, who had arrived while I was on the patio, smiled at me in a way that made my heart skip. Later that evening, after the party ended and I was back at my apartment, Jason and I sat on my couch. "Marcus offered me a job," he said suddenly. "Management position at one of his dental practices. Better pay, better hours, actual career trajectory." I pulled back to look at him. "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know," he admitted. "On one hand, it's a great opportunity. On the other hand, it feels weird accepting a job from your sister's ex-husband, like I'm still somehow entangled in all the Victoria drama." "Take it," I said firmly. "You deserve opportunities based on your qualifications, not punished because you were part of exposing Victoria's lies. If Marcus thinks you're qualified, then you probably are." "There's something else," Jason said. "I know we've been rebuilding our friendship these past months, and I know I have no right to ask for more than that. But Harper, I need you to know. I never stopped loving you. Not when I was with Victoria, not when we were apart, not now. And if there's any chance you could see us as something more than friends again, I want to try." The confession hung between us. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to fall back into the comfort of a relationship with someone who knew me completely. But another part hesitated. "Jason, we both used Victoria. We both participated in bringing down her life. That's not exactly a romantic foundation for a relationship." "No," he agreed, "but it's an honest one. We both saw injustice and decided to do something about it. That's not something to be ashamed of." He took my hand. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm just asking you to think about it. Think about whether we could build something real from this mess. I'll think about it, I promised. And I meant it. The next few weeks brought unexpected developments. Marcus's job offer to Jason came with a condition. Jason had to complete a management training program and prove he was serious about career growth. Jason accepted and threw himself into the work with impressive dedication. Victoria started posting on social media again, but the content had changed. Instead of designer outfits and luxury lifestyle shots, she posted about therapy, personal growth, and accountability. Some people mocked her for it. Others praised her vulnerability. My own life settled into a new rhythm. Work at the grocery store continued, but I started taking online business courses in the evenings. If Victoria had taught me anything, it was that career complacency leads to resentment. I wanted to build something that was mine, something I could be proud of on my own terms. The family dynamics improved slowly. My parents hosted Sunday dinners again, with both Victoria and me attending. We weren't close, but we were civil. We could exist in the same room, even have brief conversations, without the underlying hostility that had defined our relationship before. Marcus remained friendly with our family, particularly because of Emma, which meant Victoria and he had to interact regularly. They managed it with impressive maturity. 3 months after Thanksgiving, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Harper Ashford?" a professional-sounding woman asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Jennifer Chen, and I'm a producer for a podcast called Family Fractures. We interview people about complicated family dynamics and how they navigate them. Your story has been brought to our attention, and we'd love to have you as a guest." My stomach dropped. "How do you know my story?" "Anonymous tip," she said smoothly. "Someone sent us a detailed account of what happened between you and your sister. We found it compelling and thought our audience would too. Would you be interested in sharing your perspective?" "No," I said firmly. "This is private family business." "Of course," Jennifer replied. "But I should mention we've already spoken with Victoria. She's agreed to be interviewed. We'll be recording next week. I wanted to give you the opportunity to share your side before we air her perspective alone." I hung up and immediately called Victoria. "Did you really agree to talk about what happened on some podcast?" "Yes," Victoria said. "My therapist thought it might be helpful. Process everything publicly, take ownership of my mistakes, show that I'm working on being better." Without asking if I was okay with our family drama being broadcast to strangers. "It's my story too," Victoria said. "I'm not sharing details about you that you wouldn't want public. I'm talking about my actions, my consequences, my growth. That's mine to share." "Victoria?" "I'm doing the interview, Harper. You can participate and share your perspective, or you can let me tell the story alone. Your choice." I called the producer back and agreed to the interview. If our story was going to be public, it needed both perspectives. The recording session was scheduled for the following Thursday. I spent 3 days preparing what I wanted to say, how I wanted to frame the narrative, what details were shareable versus what needed to remain private. The interview itself was conducted over video call. Jennifer was skilled at asking questions that got to the heart of complex emotions. "Harper, you orchestrated a months-long operation to expose your sister's affair and financial crimes. Some people might call that noble. Others might call it revenge. How do you see it?" "Both," I admitted. "It was noble in that I was protecting Marcus from continued lies. It was revenge in that I waited until the most publicly humiliating moment to reveal everything. I'm not proud of the revenge aspect, but I won't pretend it wasn't part of my motivation." "Do you regret how things unfolded?" "Sometimes," I said honestly. "I regret that my family was fractured. I regret that Marcus was hurt. But I don't regret that Victoria finally faced consequences for her actions. She needed to understand that people matter, that you can't treat others as disposable without eventually paying a price." Victoria has said in her interview that she's grateful you exposed her, that it forced her to confront behaviors she'd been avoiding for years. How does that make you feel? Skeptical, I admitted, but also hopeful. If Victoria genuinely changes, becomes someone who treats people with respect and honesty, then maybe something good came from all of this. The podcast episode aired 2 weeks later. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of downloads, hundreds of comments, people sharing their own stories of family betrayal and complicated justice. Some listeners praised me for standing up for myself. Others condemned me for being cruel. Most fell somewhere in the middle, acknowledging the complexity of the situation. What surprised me was Victoria's response to the public reaction. She didn't defend herself or make excuses. She simply posted, "I'm working on being better than I was. That's all I can do." And then she logged off social media for a week. 4 months after Thanksgiving, I came home from work to find Jason sitting on the steps of my apartment building. "I finished the management program," he said. "Scored in the top 10%. Marcus offered me the permanent position. I start Monday." "That's amazing," I said, genuinely happy for him. "You should be proud." "I am," he said. "But I wanted to tell you in person, and I wanted to ask you again. Is there any chance for us? Not right now necessarily, but eventually?" I looked at him. This man who had helped me expose my sister's lies, who had been patient and present through my healing, who had proven he could grow and change. "Eventually," I said. "Let's start with eventually and see where it goes." He smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way it hadn't in years. "Eventually works for me." That night, I sat at my laptop and began writing. Not for a podcast or public consumption, but for myself. I wrote about Thanksgiving, about the humiliation and anger and the decision to fight back. I wrote about the cost of justice, the weight of revenge, and the complicated relief of watching someone face consequences for their actions. I wrote about my sister, who had been my tormentor and was now working toward becoming someone better. And I wrote about myself, the failure who turned out to be stronger than anyone expected. The document saved automatically. I titled it "The Cost of Being Right" and closed my laptop. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled. Inside my small apartment, everything was quiet and mine. And for the first time since that Thanksgiving dinner when Victoria called me a failure, I felt genuinely successful. Not because I had destroyed her life, but because I had built my own on foundations that couldn't be shaken by anyone else's opinion of me. The revenge had been sweet, the vindication satisfying. But the real victory was simpler. I had learned to value myself regardless of what my sister or anyone else thought, and that was worth more than any humiliation I could have inflicted. 1 year after Thanksgiving, my life looked remarkably different from the cashier existence Victoria had mocked. The online business courses had led to a certification in social media management, which led to freelance clients, which led to enough income that I quit the grocery store and worked from home full-time. My studio apartment had been replaced by a 1-bedroom with actual office space. I wasn't wealthy by Victoria's old standards, but I was comfortable and completely self-sufficient. Victoria's transformation was perhaps more dramatic. After losing her pharmaceutical sales position, she had taken a job at a nonprofit that helped women leaving abusive relationships. The pay was a fraction of what she had made before, but she seemed genuinely committed to the work. We still weren't close, probably never would be, but we had achieved something better: mutual respect from a distance. Jason and I had been officially dating for 6 months. We took it slow, both aware that our relationship had formed from complicated circumstances. He thrived in his management position at Marcus's dental practice, proving he had been underutilizing his potential as a gym trainer. We talked about moving in together, maybe next year, maybe later. There was no rush. We had time. The real surprise came on Thanksgiving morning, exactly 1 year after Victoria's public humiliation of me. My mother called. "Your father and I want to host dinner again this year. Both of you are invited. Both of you can bring your significant others if you want. We're going to try this family thing again." I almost declined. The memory of last year's dinner was still vivid. Victoria's mocking voice, the family's silence, my burning humiliation. But something made me accept. Maybe curiosity about whether we could create a new memory to replace the old one. Maybe proving to myself that I wasn't afraid of facing that room again. I arrived with Jason at 5 o'clock. Victoria was already there with her new boyfriend, a quiet man named David who worked at the nonprofit with her. Marcus came with Emma, who had legally become his daughter through adoption after the divorce. My parents greeted everyone with the forced cheer of people determined to make things work through sheer will. Dinner was awkward at first. Too much politeness, Too many careful topics. But then Emma knocked over her apple juice, and in the chaos of cleaning it up, the tension broke. Conversations became more natural. Victoria and I even exchanged a few words about her work at the nonprofit. "It's rewarding," she said when I asked about it. "Helping women who've been controlled and manipulated understand they can build new lives gives me a sense of purpose my old job never did." "That's good," I replied, and meant it. "You seem happier." "I am," Victoria said, sounding surprised by her own admission. "I make less money, drive an older car, rent instead of own, but I'm not constantly anxious about maintaining an image anymore. It's freeing." She paused. "Thank you, actually, for exposing everything. I know that sounds weird, but my therapist was right. I needed to hit rock bottom to rebuild as someone better." "I'm glad something good came from it," I said carefully. "But I hope you know I didn't do it to help you. I did it because I was hurt and angry and wanted you to suffer like you made me suffer." "I know," Victoria said, "and I did suffer. I lost everything. But now I'm building something real instead of something that looked impressive but was hollow inside." After dinner, as we gathered in the living room for dessert, my father cleared his throat. "I want to say something to both my daughters," he began, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. "Last year at this dinner, I sat here while Victoria said terrible things about Harper. I didn't intervene. I should have, but I didn't. And for that, Harper, I apologize." He turned to Victoria. "And Victoria, I enabled your worst behaviors by praising you constantly while ignoring how you treated others. I thought I was supporting your success, but really I was teaching you that accomplishments excused cruelty. For that, I apologize to you too." My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "We failed both of you in different ways. We compared you constantly, pitted you against each other without realizing it, and created an environment where one of you had to be the golden child and the other the disappointment. We're sorry for that." The apologies were unexpected and surprisingly healing. Victoria and I both cried, though we sat on opposite sides of the room. Emma, oblivious to the emotional weight of the moment, announced she wanted to show everyone her new magic trick. The adults laughed through tears and shifted focus to a 7-year-old making a quarter disappear poorly. As the evening wound down, Marcus pulled me aside. "I wanted to thank you again," he said. "If you hadn't told me the truth, I'd still be living a lie. Emma and I have a real life now, an honest one. That's because of you." "You would have figured it out eventually," I replied. "I just sped up the inevitable." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But still, thank you." He paused. "Also, Victoria told me she's thinking about going back to school for a counseling degree. Working with abuse survivors made her realize she wants formal training to do it properly. I thought you'd want to know she's serious about this new path." The information pleased me more than I expected. Victoria wasn't just going through the motions of rehabilitation, she was building something meaningful from the ruins of her old life. "That's good," I told Marcus. "She'll be good at it if she applies the same drive to helping others that she used to apply to maintaining her perfect image." Jason and I left around 9, full of turkey and surprisingly at peace. In the car, he asked, "How are you feeling? That had to be intense." "It was," I admitted, "but good intense. Like maybe we're finally moving past what happened." I looked out the window at houses decorated for the holidays, at families visible through lit windows. I don't know if Victoria and I will ever be close. Too much has happened. But maybe we can be something better than enemies. "That's growth," Jason observed. "Both of you growing, just in different directions." He reached over to take my hand. "I'm proud of you, you know, for surviving what she did to you, for exposing the truth, for not backing down even when it got hard. You're not the failure she claimed you were. You never were." "I know," I said, and realized I actually believed it. For years, Victoria's voice had been the one I heard in my head, telling me I wasn't enough, wasn't successful enough, wasn't worthy. But that voice had been replaced by my own, and it told a different story. 3 weeks later, I received a letter from Victoria. Not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter delivered by mail. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won out. "Harper," it began, I'm writing this the old-fashioned way because I wanted you to know I took time with it, that I thought carefully about every word. I've been in therapy for over a year now, and my therapist suggested I write letters to people I've hurt, whether I send them or not. I'm sending this one because you deserve to hear it. I was a terrible sister to you. Not just at Thanksgiving, but for our entire lives. I saw you as competition instead of family, and I treated you accordingly. When you were happy, I couldn't stand it because it meant you weren't beneath me. When you struggled, I used it to feel superior. That's a sickness, and I'm working on curing it. The truth is, I was jealous of you. You had something I never did. The ability to be content with what you had, to find joy in simple things, to build a life that didn't require constant external validation. I had to have the best job, the best husband, the best house, the best everything. And none of it made me happy because it was all performance, not substance. Losing everything was the worst thing and the best thing that ever happened to me. I had to rebuild myself from nothing, and in doing so, I learned what actually matters. Not success or status or money, but genuine connections with people, meaningful work, and being someone who adds value to the world instead of just taking from it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that the person who humiliated you at Thanksgiving is not the person I'm trying to become. I'm working every day to be better, and your willingness to expose my worst self was the catalyst for that change. Thank you for refusing to let me get away with it. Thank you for being strong enough to stand up for yourself. And thank you for still showing up to family dinners, even though being in the same room with me must be difficult. Your sister, who's trying to earn that title, Victoria. I read the letter 3 times, then put it in a box with other important documents. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was acknowledgement. And that was enough. 6 months after that Thanksgiving reunion dinner, Victoria and I met for coffee. Just the two of us, no buffer of other family members, no boyfriends or parents or nieces to dilute the intensity. We sat across from each other in a small cafe, both nervous, both wondering if this was a mistake. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Victoria said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted, but I decided it was worth trying. We talked for 2 hours, not about the past, we'd exhausted that topic, but about the present and future. Victoria told me about her counseling program, about the women she was helping at the nonprofit, about how different her life was from what she'd imagined it would be. I told her about my social media management business, about Jason, about the financial stability I'd built for myself. "You were right, you know," Victoria said as we prepared to leave. "At Thanksgiving, when you exposed everything, you were right that I needed to face consequences. I hated you for it at the time, but you were right." "I wasn't trying to help you," I reminded her. "I was trying to hurt you." "I know," Victoria said, "but it helped anyway. Sometimes people need to be hurt before they can heal." That sounds twisted, but it's true. As we parted ways on the sidewalk, Victoria hesitated. "I know we'll probably never be close. I know I damaged our relationship beyond full repair. But maybe someday we can be friends. Not sisters who have to love each other because of biology, but friends who choose to care about each other because of who we've become." "Maybe," I agreed. "Someday." And in that maybe, there was more hope than I had felt in years. 2 years after the Thanksgiving that changed everything, I sat in my home office responding to client emails when my phone rang. Marcus. "Hey, I have a weird question," he said. "Emma's school is doing a career day, and they asked parents to bring in someone to talk about their job. I was wondering if you'd be interested in talking to second graders about social media management." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, really. Emma specifically asked for you. She told her teacher that her Aunt Harper has the coolest job because she gets to be on the computer all day and help people tell their stories." Marcus laughed. "Out of the mouths of babes." I accepted, and the following week found myself in Emma's classroom talking to 25 7-year-olds about my work. Emma beamed with pride as I explained how I helped businesses connect with customers online. After my presentation, as I gathered my materials, Emma's teacher approached me. "That was wonderful," she said. "Thank you for taking the time. Emma talks about you constantly, Her Aunt Harper, who stood up for herself and became successful. You're clearly very important to her. The comment stayed with me for days. I had spent so much time thinking about my relationship with Victoria, about the revenge and consequences and transformation, that I hadn't considered how my story might impact the next generation. Emma saw me not as a failure or a victim or even a victor, just as someone who had built a life she was proud of. That perspective shift changed something fundamental in how I viewed what had happened. I had framed the entire narrative as a story about revenge and justice, about making Victoria pay for her cruelty. But maybe it was actually a story about refusing to accept other people's definitions of success, about standing up when standing up was hard, about rebuilding yourself when others tried to tear you down. On the third anniversary of that Thanksgiving, I received a text from Victoria. Thank you for that night 3 years ago. I know that sounds insane, but thank you for caring enough about your own worth to fight back. It changed both our lives for the better. I replied, You're welcome, and I hope you know I'm genuinely proud of who you've become. It was true. Victoria would never be the person I wanted her to be 3 years ago. She would never give me back the childhood where she was a loving sister instead of a rival. But she had become someone honest, someone who helped others, someone who took responsibility for her actions. That was enough. Jason and I got engaged that Christmas. Victoria sent a thoughtful card and a donation to a women's shelter in our names instead of a traditional gift. My parents cried happy tears. Marcus offered to host the reception at his house. Emma insisted on being the flower girl. At the engagement party, Victoria and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen while others celebrated in the living room. Are you happy? She asked. Really happy? Yes, I said without hesitation. Are you? Getting there, Victoria replied. I'm not where I thought I'd be at 35, but I'm somewhere better, somewhere real. She picked at the label on her beer bottle. I still think about that Thanksgiving sometimes, about how cruel I was, about how you looked standing there while I tore you down. I'm sorry I put you through that. I know, I said, and I'm sorry I took such pleasure in watching your life fall apart afterward. You shouldn't be, Victoria said. I earned every bit of that fall. You just made sure I landed hard enough to learn something. We rejoined the party, and I watched her laugh with David, watched her interact naturally with my friends, watched her be genuinely happy for me without any underlying jealousy or resentment. The transformation was remarkable. Not complete. She still had work to do, probably always would. But remarkable nonetheless. As the party wound down and guests departed, Jason pulled me close. 3 years ago, your sister called you a failure in front of your whole family, he murmured. Now you're celebrating your engagement, running a successful business, surrounded by people who love you. Not bad for a failure? Not bad at all, I agreed, looking around at the life I had built from the ashes of that humiliating Thanksgiving. Victoria had meant to destroy my self-worth that night. Instead, she had ignited something that burned away every insecurity she had planted over the years. The revenge had been real, the consequences devastating. But the transformation, both mine and Victoria's, had been even more powerful than any vengeance I could have imagined. I had set out to hurt her the way she hurt me. Instead, I had freed us both from the toxic pattern that had defined our relationship. And in the end, that was the best revenge of all. Not destroying her, but forcing both of us to become better versions of ourselves. Victoria lost her perfect life and found a meaningful one. I lost my victim status and found my strength. The cashier was never a failure. She just needed the right catalyst to prove everyone wrong, and her sister, cruelly and unintentionally, had provided exactly that.